Hopefully there's people here.
Good morning. We'll see how it goes, won't we?
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. You are here for Transform Twitter into a video generation machine using Twitter Spaces with our friend Ruth Snyder. So come on in, get settled. And I'm going to go ahead and start the Facebook stream. Fingers crossed.
It looks like you were successful. Yay!
Awesome. Awesome. So if you're watching on Facebook, hello, hello. Okay, come on in. All right. For those of you that are here, we do have a question for you. If you have a Twitter account, pop it into the chat and let us know if you have a Twitter account, how active you are on Twitter, what kind of relationship you have with Twitter. Here is Alexa. Active, is active. Awesome. All right, so that's all right, Kathy. You're gonna learn a lot today. Yes, I did, Alexa. I decided to try it and see if it would work, and it did. All right. Okay, come on in. If you would benefit from closed captioning, that is available today by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. This is also where you can turn the captions on and off. Yes, Alexa, I wanted to get everybody in the room and settled since we have a nice tight hour. And make sure we get all the Facebook Live kinks worked out. All right. Hi. Welcome, Eva's on Twitter. Lillian is on Twitter. Who else? Don't be shy. Go ahead and pop it into the chat and tell us if you are on Twitter. If you are newer to Twitter, Ruth will be covering all of that. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started because it is 10 o'clock and we have a lot to cover in this hour. So first of all, welcome everybody. Just a reminder, you're here for Transform Twitter into a video generation machine using Twitter Spaces with Ruth Snyder. And I'm pleased to introduce Ruth, who some of you may know from the Women in Publishing Summit. Ruth L Snyder is an author, speaker, and coach. She helps entrepreneurs write, publish, and profit from their books. Ruth figures out ways to work smarter, not harder, then shares those tips with her clients. One of her clients says, Ruth makes the seemingly impossible feel attainable with her easy-to-follow steps. Her book, Twitter Decoded, helps authors learn how to set up a Twitter account and use Twitter to build community. Ruth has shared her expertise on platforms like Thrive Global, Women in Publishing, Authority Magazine, The Right Coach, and Author Audience Academy. You can connect with Ruth at her website, ruthlsnyder.com, and I will be putting links to her website and her book in the chat. And we do have a Q&A box today, so if you have questions for Ruth, go ahead and pop those in the Q&A box, and she is going to take a look at them as she chats with us today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ruth.
Good morning. Well, I don't know, maybe it's not morning where you are, but it's morning where I am. So I'm happy to be here with you today. And I am living in northeastern Alberta in Canada and excited to share about Twitter and Twitter Spaces. So first of all, I am going to share my screen with you and we will jump right in. So this webinar is for you if you are an author, and I'm assuming most of you are authors because you are connected with Women in Publishing. It's for you if you want to find more readers, and what author doesn't want to? It's for you if you want to sell more books. And of course, that's usually why we write our books. And it's for you if you want to grow a community of raving fans. And just a statement to remind you that by attending this webinar or enrolling in my programs, it doesn't mean that you're going to get the same results as I get. Most people get the how-to but never take action with the information. I'm sharing what has worked for me and my students, and your results are dependent on many factors, including but not limited to your ability to work hard, commit yourself, and do whatever it takes. Entering any business is going to involve a level of risk as well as massive commitment and action. So if you're not willing to accept that, please do not watch this webinar or sign up for my courses. My mission is to help at least 10,000 people write, publish, and profit from their books. And today in this webinar, we will discover the power of Twitter Spaces for authors, delve into 3 successful strategies that I have found work for me and my students, and discuss possible next steps for you. So who am I? Why am I giving you this webinar? My Twitter story starts when I had 5 children, ages 1 to 11, and I won my first writing contest and attended my first writing conference. And I walked in feeling like a total fraud, and I'm sure we all struggle with this, but I knew that there were other people in the room that had multiple books published, and I won a writing contest, but who am I? And I was busy. I had 5 kids. I had just started working on the school board in our area. I didn't have much time. So how am I going to fit writing into my busy schedule? One of the ladies at the conference invited me to try using Twitter as a mini blog. She knew that I was busy and she said, hey, you know, it's not going to take you that much time to use Twitter. So do that. And I did. And I'm glad that I did because I learned how to write concisely. I learned how to communicate well. And I also learned how to grow an audience. My second aha moment with Twitter came through my school board work. We were advocating for a school in our local area. And as sometimes happens, promises were made, but then money was tight. And so the promise that was made was being pulled back on, and we were being told, well, yes, you can have your school, but it's not going to be the size that we said it would be. And so we did everything that we were told to do as politicians. We met with our MLAs, our local representatives, and we did all the surveys and all the tests that needed to be done. And still, we were being told, sorry, that's all the money that's available. If you want a school, this is the size that you're going to get. And so one day our superintendent came to the school board meeting and he said, I don't know what else to do. I've done everything. You guys have done everything. I don't know. And so I said, would you mind if I put some tweets out on Twitter? And after a little bit of discussion, they said, okay, well, be careful what you say, but you have our okay to do that. So I did. I sent out a couple tweets on Twitter. And as far as we know, nothing else changed. But the next morning, our superintendent received a phone call from Alberta Education informing him that they needed to meet with him because they had some things they needed to discuss. And from there, we were granted our school, the size that we had asked for. And I was just like, wow, if you use Twitter properly, it's powerful. Of course, the opposite is also true. If you don't use it properly, then it can cause you problems. But then as people saw what I was doing on Twitter as an author, they asked me to write a book helping them to do the same thing. And so that's where my Twitter Decoded book came from practical steps that I took and what was working for me. And so that is available. And I launched it originally as an ebook only. And I launched two ebooks actually, Learn Twitter Beginning Steps and Learn Twitter Intermediate Steps. And then I combined those into one book for Twitter Decoded. And when I launched my first Learn Twitter book, I was amazed because the work that I had done on Twitter came back to me. I was able to get thousands of copies of that book into people's hands because of those connections that I had on Twitter. I kind of pulled back a little bit from Twitter a few years ago when some of the politicians were being, I would say, abusive on Twitter. And I just had a bad taste for Twitter. And so I kind of pulled back. But last year, I decided to go and check out what was happening on Twitter. And while I was on there, I met a fellow from Australia named Keith Keller, and he invited me to experience Twitter Spaces. And like many of you, I had no idea what Twitter Spaces was, but I was amazed. I went into Twitter Spaces. It's kind of like Zoom without the video, but it also has some features that enable you to have a conversation with people. And here was an audience from around the globe, literally. I mean, the host was from Australia. I was from Canada. There were people from the US. There were people from South America. There were people from Africa. And we were all talking live on Twitter. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I need to explore this some more. And so I decided to jump in with both feet, and I started hosting a weekly Twitter space in January. And here's some stats for you. In just 4 weeks, I added over 500 followers to my Twitter account. I had anywhere from 200 to 450 listeners live, and I had from 60 to 316 listeners listening to the recording of my Twitter space. And as you can see on the right, this was my best day. I had 454 people that joined and 316 people who listened to the replay. So over 700 people interacted with my content just from being on that Twitter space. And what I have decided to do is I host my show called Building. It's changed, the title's changed a little bit. It's changed to Building Global Community in 2022. And I interview a different person every week. And then we have an open discussion. And when I first started, I thought, oh, an hour is going to be lots of time. And so I planned on an hour. And after the hour, people were still wanting to talk. And so now we go anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. And I don't know any other platform where you can just go and have that kind of communication, that kind of interaction. And so let's talk a little bit more about it. I liked this tweet. This quote, if Paul Revere had been a modern day citizen, he wouldn't have ridden down Main Street. He would have tweeted. So those of you who are on Twitter, you understand. If you haven't been on Twitter yet, come join us. It's amazing. I see somebody was raising their hand. I don't know if that was a mistake. If you have questions, feel free to jump in. Maria, do you know how to access the Q&A box? I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Hey, Ruth, sometimes people raise their hand on accident. So
Okay.
that's probably what happened with that. I would just ignore that. And everyone, if you have a question, just make sure you drop it in the Q&A box.
Okay, so Sapphire has a question. If so many people are talking live, how do you control people talking over each other? So there are skills that you have to learn. You do need to know that on Twitter Spaces, you as the host have complete control over the microphone access. And you can, if you need to, you can absolutely mute everybody that's in the space. I have not had to use that. I think I used it once in 5 months. And so you basically just set, one of the things I talk about in my course is you have to set the parameters for your space so that people know what's expected. And then there is the option, if you take my course, you'll see that there are options for people to raise their hands, just like in this webinar. And I always ask people to raise their hands if they want to speak. And most of the time people do respect that. Occasionally you get people in the room that try to cause trouble. We call them trolls on Twitter. And you have to be ready to handle that. But for the most part, people are pretty respectful. And Susan is asking, is there a cost? There is absolutely no cost to participate in Twitter Spaces. Okay, so let's just do a quick overview of Twitter itself. If you've never been on, this is what the desktop version of Twitter looks like. And so you have the opportunity to put a banner and your profile picture, and then your name, and this at Ruth L Snyder is called your Twitter handle. You can put your bio and a link, and then you can put tweets up. And then you have all these features that you can interact with on Twitter. And I would love to delve more deeply into Twitter itself, but because we have limited time, I am just giving a very brief overview. Like I said, I have written Twitter Decoded, so that's available if you want more information on how to set up your profile. When you go and open an account on Twitter, you will have what is called an egghead. So Twitter puts a placeholder there for your profile picture. So one of the first things I advise people to do is to make sure that you put your own profile picture in there, because people know that you're new to Twitter if you don't change that. And yeah, if you have other questions about Twitter itself, we can handle that in a few minutes, but I just want to jump right into Twitter Spaces. So first, you need to know that to access Twitter Spaces, Twitter decided to make Twitter Spaces accessible to everybody who has a cell phone. And so for that reason, they started out with Twitter Spaces only accessible through the Twitter app on your cell. You can listen to Twitter Spaces from your desktop, but you cannot speak in a Twitter Space if you are on your desktop. So if you have a cell phone, you are able to host a space, and some people want to host spaces and repurpose the spaces as podcasts or something like that. Twitter does record the spaces, but it's not high quality recordings. And so if you're wanting to do a podcast, I would advise you not to think about Twitter Spaces as a podcast. So this is what the Twitter Space looks like when you have it on your phone. These are 3 separate screenshots. As you can see, you pick a title for your space, and then Twitter also gives you the option to pick 3 different topics, and that gives people an idea of whether they want to enter your space or not. Then you can see people that are in your space. You can see their profile picture, and while you are in the space, you can click on people's, or tap, because you're on your phone, tap on people's profile picture. You can DM them, you can follow them, they can follow you. Every space that I have, I gain new followers. And that's why, like I said before, in in 4 weeks, my account grew by 500 people just because of Twitter Spaces. Since then, so in January, my account, I had about 5,000 followers. I'm currently up to about 1,700 followers, or sorry, 6,700 followers. So my followers have increased by 1,700 people since January. And that's mostly because I use Twitter Spaces. Twitter also gives you the option to use closed captioning, and I find that really helpful because, like I said, it's a global audience and you have people from all over the world, and sometimes it's hard to understand people's accents. And of course, the closed captioning isn't always accurate, but at least it helps you get an idea of what people are saying, and you can follow the conversation a little bit better. In this screenshot, you can see the emojis that are available. So this heart icon is what gives you access to the emojis. And it depends. Twitter gives different emojis to different people. So if you have hosted Twitter Spaces, I have hearts here now. Some people still have the 100. There's also this has changed, I believe now on Twitter Spaces, the laugh out loud icon is next, and then the peace icon, the hello icon, and I'm trying to remember what is in this spot. And then this is the raised hand that you use if you want to converse. All right, and so, and this screenshot shows you, I tapped on somebody's profile picture and this came up. So as a host, you have the opportunity to send direct messages. You can invite them to speak in your space. So when you open your space as a host, you are the only one who has microphone access. You are the one that gets to decide who else speaks. And you can invite, currently, you can invite up to 10 other speakers. And you can also invite up to 2 other hosts. You can have 2 co-hosts that join you. Twitter is talking about expanding this to 4 co-hosts and 20 people who have microphone access at one time. Just because somebody has microphone access at the beginning of the space doesn't mean that you have to have them have the microphone access for the whole space. So the conversation rolls, and you will find that Twitter Spaces is more informal, I would say, than Zoom or something else, because people come and go, and because they can listen to it on their phone, people are often cooking dinner or walking their dog or driving in their car and listening, kind of like a podcast. And so I'm just going to go back to this stat page for a minute. You'll see that this stickiness, that tells me that listeners on average participated in just over 18% of the amount of time that the Twitter space was live. So even though I had 454 people in the space, I didn't have 454 people at once. This tells me that I had 68 people at one time in the space and 200 people total that were in that particular space. All right, so let's jump into strategies that you can use as an author. So tips for hosting a Twitter space. You need to think about the topic, length, and style of your space. Irmgard's asking me what day or time I host. So I actually host on Wednesdays because that's the day that works well for me. And I played around with different times. I started out hosting at noon my time. I live in Mountain Time. And I found that I didn't get as many people. And so I moved my time to, I started with 6 p.m. Eastern, and I did get quite a lot of people then. Currently, I am hosting at 8 p.m. Eastern, and that is the time that is working for me. So it's just like any other platform. You kind of have to do some experimenting and find out what works best for you and your audience. And even though there are a lot of people from all over the world, you will find that, I mean, the audience on Twitter is mostly from the United States. I think the stat is somewhere around 40% of Twitter spaces or Twitter people that have accounts on Twitter are from the United States. Sapphire is asking, is there a replay capability? I'm assuming you're asking about Twitter Spaces. So yes, when you start so Twitter gives you the option to either start immediately or to schedule a Twitter Space. You can schedule up to 2 weeks before you host your space. And when you put in the information about your space, so you have to put the title and the subjects, like I said. So you put the title, you put the topics, and then when you schedule, you need to toggle on the record feature. It is not automatically on. You have to put it on, and if you forget, then your space does not get recorded. So as long as you toggle that on, your space is recorded. Currently, Twitter gives you access to the recordings for only 30 days, and they do not allow you to download those recordings. However, there are other apps that are available. One is called Flowgen, and I am going to put that in the chat. That is an app that you can use, and if you connect your Twitter account to Flowgen, they will bring your recordings into Flowgen for you automatically. You don't have to do anything other than connecting your account. And those recordings are available indefinitely, and you can download them. So yes, you can use your recordings. So after you pick Flowgen, is a platform of its own, kind of like a podcasting platform. So it does not record other platforms. However, there is another app you can use, headliner.ai. Oh, I see that my comments only go to panelists. So maybe Alexa or Nancy could repost my. Okay, Nancy's saying that she'll send out the resources in a replay email. So headliner.ai is another app that you can use, and you can get your link to your space and put it into headliner.ai before you have your space, and it will record your space for you as well. And what I love about Headliner is after your space is over, Headliner was created for podcasters as well. Once the recording is completed, you can go back in and you can create audio clips from your space, and you can also repost those clips onto Twitter. You can send them by email. You can put them on any other social media site that you want, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. So it's a great app for creating repurposed content. All right. So after you pick your topic, length, and style, you need to decide if you want to co-host. Now, because Twitter Spaces is on your phone, it is kind of tricky to do everything on your own. So I advise you to find a co-host, and I have tips for doing that in my training. You will need to schedule your space, and like I said, turn on the record button. Okay, so Susan is asking, is Twitter Space a separate app? No. In your Twitter app, if you, instead of tapping on the tweet button, if you hold it, the Spaces option will come up, or on the bottom of your phone, you should see a little microphone icon, and that takes you into Spaces as well. So that's two ways of accessing Spaces from your phone. So after you schedule your space, I have found that polls, graphics, and inviting people are really important, because just like anything else, if you can have the best content, but if nobody knows about it, they're not going to show up. So polls allow you to ask anybody on Twitter for their opinion, and you can create any poll you want. It can be up for a day or 2 weeks, and you can get really great feedback. So you could ask your readers about for suggestions on naming characters, or suggestions on titling your book, or whatever you want to ask them. And then you can use that information. I use Canva a lot to create my graphics, and I actually usually create a video every week to invite people to my space. And then the other thing you can do on Twitter is you can schedule tweets, and there's no limit. I mean, you can send out as many tweets as you want on a topic. So usually my space is on Wednesdays, and I will schedule all of my tweets. Usually on Monday, I spend about an hour scheduling tweets, and I will schedule a tweet every hour from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, starting on Monday, and then on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday until my space starts. And that's a really good way to let people know that you're there. And of course, if you have your space every week at the same time, people get used to that and they show up. Cues are really important, because Twitter Spaces is all audio. There is no video. People can't see your face. They can't see anything. They just hear you. And so audio cues are really important when you're using Twitter Spaces. You can say, we're going to have an interview for 20 to 30 minutes. And then after the interview is over, we will invite people to the stage to ask questions and give comments on what was shared. So be prepared for that. And then just before you go to your Q&A time, you need to say something like, we're just about ready for Q&A time. So I'm going to call on Nancy first, and then Alexa can be ready to speak after that. And that just gives people a chance to say, oh, okay, I'm going to be called on. I need to be ready. And especially if they're out walking their dog or making dinner, it gives them time to grab their phone and so yeah, I'm just using you as an example. Oh, yes. Okay. The word nest is, think of the Jumbotron that's used for sports events. The nest is kind of like that in Twitter Spaces. It's an area at the top of your space where you can post information, you can put links, you can put whatever information you find helpful and want to share with your audience. So of course, as an author, you can share your website, you can share your Amazon Central page, you can share whatever you want in the nest. And the only thing that I caution you about is you cannot put anything in the nest that is not already tweeted on your profile. So that's why I say prepare the tweets for the nest ahead of time. And I usually actually bookmark them so they're easy to find while I'm in my space, and then share them. you can invite speakers to your space, and there is, I mean, it takes practice to run the space. But like I said, I've had really good results, and I think everybody that is consistent and puts effort into it would have good results. There is another app, I guess it's a website called Buy Me a Coffee. And they also have the option of Buy Me a Book. It's kind of like Patreon in some ways. It's a way for people to contribute to what you're doing. So if they like your space and what you're doing, they can buy you a coffee or a book or a pizza or whatever you decide to use as the title. The website is called buymeacoffee.com. And so that's just a way to allow people to contribute to what you're doing. As an author, something to think about, you might want to have some standalone spaces where you decide to have a book launch. Why not? You do it on Facebook. Why don't you do it on Twitter? And actually tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, I am excited that I'm going to help somebody, a friend of mine. Her name is Catherine Satori, but her pen name is Kathleen O'Donovan. She is launching her book called Celtic Knots, and we are going to be doing a book launch tonight at 9 p.m. during my Twitter space. So if you want to see what that's like, come join us. Okay, Melissa, you're not going to find the nest on Twitter itself. It's only something that happens in Twitter Spaces. Sorry if I wasn't clear about that. Something else that you can do is something like a webinar. You know, if you want to teach something, you can just do a standalone space and present your information. It's, like I said, it's free. The great thing about Twitter Spaces is that if you have a Twitter account and you have followers, they are going to receive notification of your spaces. And so maybe you want to host your webinars, podcast style webinars on Twitter Spaces. So the launch is at 9 p.m. Eastern, which is 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Thanks for clarifying. Okay, Felicia, you're asking about Buy Me a Coffee. I'll come back to that if I have time. I just want to make sure I get through all the other information first. So those are two ideas for standalone spaces. Here are some ideas if you want to have Twitter Spaces every week or twice a month or once a month. Why don't you interview fellow authors in your genre? Build up to a box set launch. Why not? The more we collaborate, the better it is for everybody. How about hosting a book club on Twitter Spaces? Use your book for the discussion guide and encourage the participants to buy your book. Offer a mini series based on your nonfiction book. If you're teaching something, offer a mini series, kind of like what we're doing with the webinar series on women in publishing. Or maybe you want to offer open discussion on a topic or genre. Maybe you want to offer writing tips to people, or maybe you write cozy mysteries and you want to have open discussions. There is someone else on Twitter, her name is Rachel, and she hosts spaces every Wednesday at noon. I believe it's noon Mountain, so it'd be 2 p.m. Eastern. And she interviews authors every week. And they have open discussions on topics. Susan, you're asking about the name of the launch party for tonight. It is going to be happening in my Twitter space. So the easiest way to find my Twitter space is to follow me, Ruth L Snyder, on Twitter. And I always pin the link to my space at the top of my profile so that it's easy to find. So that's the easiest way for you to find it. Charlene, I talked about ways to record the space. So Twitter does record the space, but it's only available for 30 days and it's not downloadable. If you want a downloadable recording, use something like Flowgen. And Headliner also allows you to record, but you cannot download. So your best bet right now, I would say, is Flowgen, because you can download the recordings. Again, if you're into podcasting, the quality of the recording from Twitter is not the best. So you might want to rethink what you are using if you're wanting to use Twitter Spaces. So I have talked about a lot of things, and this is a very, very quick overview of Twitter Spaces. So I want to let you know about my Twitter Spaces for Authors course. I don't know why you came, but Twitter Spaces for Authors is for you if you've written a book, if you want to find more people interested in your book, if you want to sell more copies of your book, and you want to grow a community of raving fans. So I just want to make sure that you know that this is not, Twitter Spaces is not a quick and easy fix. It's like any other marketing that you're going to do. It is work. It takes time and energy and consistency, but it will work. So in my Twitter Spaces for Authors, I teach you about Twitter Spaces and how to access it. I give actual step-by-step instructions because I know it's can be overwhelming. Twitter Spaces, I cover the Twitter Spaces dashboard. I cover hosting tips and encouraging engagement during your spaces. I teach you how to advertise your space for free. And I also teach you about monetizing Twitter Spaces. Now, for you in the United States, you do have an advantage because Twitter always releases new features in the United States. And right now, one of the features that they are releasing is called Ticketed Spaces. So you can actually have people sign up for a space and pay for it. You can decide how much you charge. Some people are charging like $4.99. Some people are charging $10. It's just like a webinar. You can charge what you want. You can host it for free or you can charge for it. So it's not available to anyone else right now, but in the United States, it is available. All right. So buy me a coffee. I'll go back to that. I did cover all of the information that I wanted to make sure I got through today. So if there was something that I just kind of glossed over really quickly and you want to ask a question about it, feel free to put that in the Q&A. And I'm going to go back to buy me a coffee. So buy me a coffee is an actual website at buymeacoffee.com. You can open an account and you can do multiple things in there. They do have the option for you to kind of have a membership feature on there. So you can charge money for a membership and then give specific information that's only available to those that pay for your membership. You can sell items on their website as well. So there are a lot of features. You can give people your Buy Me a Coffee link and they can donate $5 or $10 or $15, any increments of $5. And Buy Me a Coffee uses Stripe. So if you have a Stripe account, that's how they pay you. But I believe it takes about 3 or 4 days before the money comes through from what people donate to what you receive. All right, so let's just go back since I don't have any questions coming. Again, this is what Twitter Spaces will look like on your phone. if you have, I'll just throw this out. If you have an iPhone, Twitter Spaces works really, really well. If you have an Android, some people have issues because Twitter started with on the iPhone and they're still adjusting some of the settings that to work better on Android. But there is another option. Some of you might know about this. Blue, let me just make sure I get the name right. Blue, what is it? I can't find it right now. I think it's called Blue Menu or Blue. I'm not seeing it on my desktop. Anyway, there is a gaming app that allows you to play games that you have on your phone on your desktop. And so if you Bluehost, I think it's called, I will look it up and I will send the link to Women in Publishing so that they can send it out with the information. So if you download that app, you can actually participate in spaces on your desktop if you get frustrated with participating on your phone. That is one workaround that some people use. Some people were asking about the nest. If you are in spaces, the nest will be up above here. You kind of have to scroll up to see the nest. And you'll see here, it says 6 tweets shared in this space. So in this space, there were 6 tweets that were up in the nest. They're not showing in the screenshot right now. So just a reminder, if you want to participate in Twitter Spaces, you have to have a Twitter account and you must be on your cell phone unless you use the workaround. Irmgard's asking why I included 2022 in my title. I decided to do that because I kicked off my space at the beginning of 2022, and I wanted people to know that it was current information, and I didn't know how long I was going to run that specific space. Now, I am going to put a call out to you. If you are an author and you have an interesting story about something that was difficult in your life and how you turned it around and used that to your advantage, I would love to interview you starting in July. I'm going to transition my space to a different topic. I haven't come up with the exact title yet, but I want to do a space that is inspirational and motivational for entrepreneurs and authors. And so I'm going to be interviewing people who have those kind of stories. So reach out to me if you want to be involved. I would love to interview some of you. The advantages of no video are obvious. Yes, come as you are. Have you found disadvantages as well? Okay, so obviously I mentioned that you have to give cues to people because they can't see you. You cannot physically see the people that are in your space. And I didn't talk much about this, but there are people that come to spaces specifically for the purpose of disrupting or sharing a message that they want to get across. And so you do need to be prepared. This is, see where it says mute everyone as a host. You do need to be prepared to mute everyone if you need to. If your space goes crazy, there was only, like I said, once in 5 months that I had to do that, but sometimes it happens. The other option that you have is you'll see in this screenshot that I can remove the person from the room. I can report and remove them. Twitter takes it very serious in they want to provide a safe space. And so if it is not a safe space, you can report and remove the person. And you can also block them if you don't want them to interact with you anymore.
And I will say, Ruth, that this is like another excellent reason to have somebody else helping you moderate
Yes,
the space,
exactly.
right?
Yes.
Have another person. And I'm also wondering if, and maybe you cover this in Twitter Spaces, but are you able to do like dry runs in Twitter Spaces to kind of like practice everything without anybody being in there?
So at this point, Twitter Spaces does not have that option. When you go on, anybody can join. But often what people will do is in the heading, they'll put test, like I'm testing this or whatever. And so people will know, oh, they're just testing something. Sometimes people still come in. Like yesterday, I did a test run with Catherine, who is doing or Kathleen, who's doing her launch tonight, because she had never been on Twitter Spaces before, and she wants to make sure that she can get on. So we had a test run, and we actually had about, I would say, 6 or 7 other people join us. And I was very upfront. We're testing this. Kathleen doesn't know how to participate, and so we just want to make sure that everything is good for the show tomorrow. But they stuck around, and they clapped when she was able to access things.
Oh,
and
good.
I gave her good feedback. And so I don't know. I find the community on Twitter very warm and welcoming, and it took me 3 weeks to figure out how to put something in the nest, but people helped me. They helped me figure it out. And we have people come into my space who don't know how to do something, and often we'll just stop and teach them right there. And then, if people want to start a space, there are so many others that are often willing to just say, hey, I'll be your co-host for a week. I'll hold your hand. Let's do it together.
That's awesome. Twitter can definitely feel very intimidating and scary, so that's good to know. The other thought that occurred to me is I know that Twitter chats are very popular, when you follow a certain hashtag like the ed chat or the marketing chat. Mm-hmm. But it seems to me like Twitter Spaces, I find those hashtag chats to be very overwhelming. And so it seems to me that Twitter Spaces is a more efficient way of doing those chats, because they're not constantly trying to keep track of all these multiple threads and stuff. So do you see that happening in Twitter Spaces, where some of these chats are now moving over to Twitter Spaces instead?
That's an interesting question, because Twitter is just introducing the option to live chat during a Twitter space. Right now, you those that have the microphone, of course, can participate in the conversation, but other people are just listening. But Twitter Spaces is introducing a live chat that keeps everything in one thread. And the interesting part of that is that when you use that, I don't, as far as I know, I don't have that feature yet. Again, they introduce everything into the States first, and then we have to wait in Canada and other countries for them.
Sorry.
But no, that's okay. But when you participate in a chat during a Twitter space, the tweet actually goes into your Twitter profile. And so people that aren't on the space see the chat, and sometimes that helps draw them in too.
Oh, that's great. That's a nice feedback loop.
Okay, so Irmgard and Lillian have a couple questions. Irmgard asks, can you run more than one space? So yes, you can run as many spaces as you want. There are some people that are on Twitter Spaces every day. right now, Twitter only gives you the option to schedule one space at a time. So if you want to advertise your space and get more people, sometimes it's hard if you're doing a space every day. But of course, the more you do it and the more consistent you are, people will get to know that you're doing that, and then they will come and join you. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same question as Lillian. I didn't realize when I saw your screenshot, I was like, oh, that looks like Clubhouse. And now I understand what it is.
Yeah, so it is very similar to Clubhouse. I have been on Clubhouse, and I guess the thing that frustrated me about Clubhouse was that I had to build a whole new audience. And the space, I mean, the Clubhouse room is the only thing that you do on Clubhouse. Whereas with Twitter, you have your profile and all your tweets, and you can interact with people either just on Twitter, or you can have Twitter spaces and you connect with, if people are in your Twitter space, you can connect with them directly from your Twitter space. So you don't have to build two different audiences. So that's my personal preference, and why I prefer Twitter spaces. So Christine's saying that she tested Instagram Live when it came out. Yeah, it is fun to learn together. So I guess the difference between like a Facebook Live or Instagram Live, I haven't used Instagram Live, but I'm assuming it's similar to Facebook Live. So Facebook Live does give you the opportunity to have people comment, but you can't give people microphone access. So that's why I like Twitter Spaces, because you can give people microphone access and you can actually have a conversation with people all over the world. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It is.
We do have a few more minutes left, Ruth, so I would love it, first of all, if you would let us know how people can connect with you if they want to be on your Twitter Spaces show, and anything else that any closing thoughts that you want to leave us with.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. And the best way to connect with me on Twitter is through my account, which is my name, Ruth L Snyder. And up here, you see my web address. So ruthlsnyder.com is my website. And if you forget how to connect with me on Twitter, feel free to join me on my website and you can ask me for whatever you want there. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. So, and I use my name on all those accounts so that it's easy to find me. If you would like to do an interview, you can, like I said, follow me on Twitter, and you can direct message me and say, hey, I was on that webinar the other day and I would love to be a guest on your show. So that would be the best way to contact me. Any other questions, comments, discussion?
Well, I asked in the chat if anybody felt inspired after this to try out Twitter Spaces, or even just to sign up for a Twitter account. And I think that you have motivated some people today to try it out. Laura wants to know if you are a global nomad.
A global nomad, does that mean somebody that travels and works while they're traveling?
Yeah.
I would love to be a global nomad. Is the picture behind me asking you or making you ask? Maybe.
Something about your title. I'm not sure what you saw, but something about your title.
Okay.
I don't know.
I would love to be a global nomad. I am not right now. I still have 4 kids that live at home with me, and they are in school, so maybe someday.
Okay. I think that was just like a global chat, right? Susan,
maybe.
yes. And Susan, definitely get into Twitter, play around, make sure you're following Ruth on Twitter, get comfortable with it, and definitely check it out. Marilyn said, I don't see how to leave you a message. Well, do you have that setting where people can only message you on Twitter if you're following each other?
I don't think I have that on, but I will double check. Let me just do that right now.
Marilyn, you can also connect with Ruth on her website.
Yes.
And we'll post our contact information in the replay email, which we will send out within 24 hours. But if you want to see Twitter Spaces in action, I did post a link to set a reminder for the book launch party tonight. So let me repost that. All right.
Yeah, so just to clarify what's happening tonight, I will be on for at least a couple hours tonight. I am interviewing two people tonight. I'm having, first of all, a lady from Ireland is joining me, and she is going to be talking about EFT. And so that starts at 8 p.m. Eastern and the interview goes anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, and then there's open discussion. And then at 9 p.m. Eastern, that's when Kathleen O'Donovan is going to be on, and we're doing her book launch. So you're welcome to join us for the whole time if you really want to get a deep dive into Twitter Spaces. If you are mostly interested in the book launch, then join us at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you so much, Ruth. I think that is it for the questions. You did a great job keeping it to the hour. That's awesome. Thank you again, Ruth. I learned so much today. I've been on Twitter for years, and I am always learning something new. So thank you. And to everybody else, we will send out the replay. It will have a recording. It will have links to all the resources that Ruth mentioned today. And definitely check out Ruth's Twitter Spaces program, because strategy is really going to be key here. And you want to go into Twitter Spaces informed and ready to leverage it as a marketing tool. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you. Have a great day.